Right. So I guess no one knows that we exist, which is a good thing, you know. Only 25 billion in assets, and no one knows that we exist. So great to be in person. I haven't done one in person in how long now? 2 years, I think, or something like that. Good to move off Zoom. All right, so all the roads lead to decentralization in a DeFi world, right? I think you can see outside that there's plenty of activity going on in the space. For those of you who don't know Celsius, we are a leading yield provider. Celsius actually invented the category back in 2017, before any of the current DeFi companies existed. And we're the first one to pay yield on DeFi, yield on Bitcoin, Ethereum. Now we pay yield on 45 different assets. And over 1 million customers, right? Full KYC, ML, and so on. We're like the CeFi version, right? The centralized finance. Really what we try to do is really help people migrate from this traditional finance side where you work for Wall Street or you work for some financial institution, and the guys at the top get to capture all the value, to a world that looks more like a circle where basically your value is determined by your contribution to the protocol or contribution to the industry versus which school did you go to, how long you've been serving this or that firm or anything else. So you're seeing new protocols being born every year, every day, that are really reinventing yield on a blockchain. We live in a world of free money, right? Trillions of dollars being printed. Close to 40% of all the money, all the dollars that ever existed were created in the last 12 months, right? So consumer price index is only up 7 or 8%, but the money creation is 40%, right? 40%. If you look at the NASDAQ is up 39.15%. So the NASDAQ index is tracking money creation. It's not that Apple is suddenly worth 40% more, but it's that people on Wall Street who are close to the plate, that's called the Cantillon effect, are basically redeploying that capital into the financial markets, which creates that asset bubble, very well pictured here by The Economist. So you can see that hockey stick. This is not a price of an NFT or the latest Solana launch, right? This is actual money printing by the Fed, right? This is how much new money is being created. People got tired of my dead jokes, so now I have to stick into DeFi and CeFi, you see? And this is not new, right? If you look at history, look at the last 2,000 years, from the Roman Empire to the Portuguese Empire, Spain, and so on, you'll see one by one that, wow, look at all of my fonts are gone. You can see that basically every reserve currency that ever existed only lasted for about 100 years, with the exception of the Roman Empire, right? So, and they were all originally backed by gold, right? But then something happened. Usually, even in the Roman Empire, this started debasing the currency. That's where it actually comes from. The coin that used to be 100% gold or 100% silver slowly became what came down. The Byzantine Empire, which is the guys that were left after the Roman Empire, had only 5% silver in the coin at the end of the empire. And that's why it collapsed, because basically they debased the currency to the point where it had no value, right? No one wanted to get those. So the question is really, how much time is left for the US dollar, considering we just printed $10 trillion? How much time is left, and what's going to replace it, right? If we continue printing dollars like crazy, borrowing from the future, right? All we're doing is grabbing money from the future, from our kids, right? And spending it today. Spending it because we want to save the economy from Corona. We want to save the economy from too big to fail, and so on, so on, so on. So We do have a process for that, right? The process is called bankruptcy. And up until the late 1980s, most companies went through a bankruptcy process. If you were a struggling company, basically you went through the bankruptcy process, you came out as a healthier company. Today, the Fed is putting a safety net under the entire economy, and we look just like Japan. We have zombie companies that are still alive that can go to the debt market and raise billions of dollars without any problem. So what you're seeing is actually deployment by banks decreasing. Banks are issuing less loans. Why? Because a lot of these zombie companies and healthy companies can just go to the debt market and issue as much debt as they want. Why? Because the Fed promises to buy all that debt no matter what the quality of the debt is, right? And today they are the largest buyer of any of either the government debt or the corporate debt. So, this is a great slide I stole from Reddit, I think. And you can see that right now, again, we have El Salvador kind of standing up to this whole idea of the US dollar dominating the world, right? 80% of global commerce is conducted in US dollars. And the question is, are we going to have few more countries rise up and say no mas? Or are we going to have a continuation of the system in which the European Union, right, the central bank, European Central Bank, the Fed, and the Japanese central bank are the ones who basically have that ability to endlessly print money? Or is it going to be Pac-Man, right? Bitcoin as Pac-Man, effectively eating away at all these different countries and putting that on the scoreboard. So this is just a slide out of order, actually. This is all the companies that have joined the Bitcoin Mining Council. So you can see Celsius is one of them. And tomorrow we're making a big announcement, a $400 million announcement. I can't say what it is because it was supposed to break, the news was supposed to break today, but it didn't. That's why the room is half empty, But we are the largest player in DeFi. We're the largest borrower in DeFi. We're the largest lender on DeFi. We're the largest miner in North America. And we have more AUM than anybody else on this floor, or the next floor, or this building, or the city. No, just kidding. So the reason Celsius is doing so well is because we can consistently provide yield to our customers, right? For 4 years, if you do the average, if you take the average, not the spikes, you will see that Celsius, even before fees, before gas fees or before any other transaction fee, withdrawal fees, all that stuff, Celsius pays a higher yield than anybody else, right? And that's really because we have many sources of yield, unlike DeFi has to rely, for example, on yield from Ethereum. Celsius can provide yield from multiple sources. So back to the original programming here. So world debt, right? World assets, 255 trillion. Right? It's a huge number. You would think we're so rich, right? But if you look at our debt, these are global debts, 297 trillion. You would say, wait a second, how is it possible? The debt is more than the equity. The other number is the total equity of all the stock markets in the world. Okay? How is that possible that we're carrying more debt than equity? Right? And that's because central banks continuously have to refinance debt. It includes government debt, corporate debt, and so on. So when companies, again, go out of business, that debt doesn't go away. Right? If you refinance it and it sits on the balance sheet of the Fed or on the balance sheet of the ECB or the balance sheet of the Japanese central bank, right? The Japanese central bank now owns over 70% of all the equities and all the debt in Japan. That includes ETFs, and it includes bonds, and it includes everything. They own over 70% of that. Why? Because they're running about 20 years ahead of the United States. That's what we're going to look like if we continue this madness of QE, MMT, right? Modern monetary theory. It ain't no modern, and it ain't no good theory, It's a guaranteed disaster. So A lot of this also is driven by the banking system. So you can see 1990, we had, these are all the banks that we had that were over 100 billion in assets. And you see now we ended up with only 4 or 5 of them. And obviously that is not good for the customers. It's not good for the banking system. No competition. So we have this new world of money over the internet protocol, right? All these different things that are bubbling up from the surface. The reason all this is doing so well is not because crypto is a solution to everything. It's because the problem I showed you before. You have a system that has no innovation, right? The last thing banks invented was, anyone? The ATM machine? No. The ATM machine? No, just kidding. You know. But basically, the ATM machine was invented in 1970, right? Credit cards invented in 1950. Show me one more product that is prevalent that everybody's using, right? So here is an experiment. This is an experiment, right? Anyone here who tells you it's not, it's just a giant experiment. But the US dollar as a fiat currency is also an experiment. 1971, we went off the gold standard. So now we have a 50-year-old experiment competing with a 12-year-old experiment. Bitcoin is a 12-year-old experiment. If you put that in that context, then it looks very, very different than what the regulators tell you. No? Just. So I view these assets in a different view than most people, most pure DeFi guys do. And the reason is that if you think about 7.8 billion people on the planet, 99% of them, not the people in this room, 99% of them cannot manage their private keys, don't know what's a public key or a private key, wouldn't know where to go to or to start. So if you want to onboard billions of people and you're asking them all to figure out how to use a MetaMask or how to not send their Polygon tokens to an ERC20 address, good luck, okay? Again, the CTO of Ripple is on his last attempt on his private treasure, and he has about $300 million locked up there. This is the CTO of Ripple, struggling, figure out how to get his keys to work on his own device. So if he can't figure it out, how are we supposed to figure out? How your grandma is supposed to figure out how to keep her assets? So part of the challenge here, what Celsius is trying to solve, is really how do we onboard all these people in a compliant, coherent, and safe way, and we allow them to change their password or access their assets in exactly the same way they do on Facebook or they do when they log into Instagram, right? That is the challenge. It's providing ease of use, but at the same time also providing that safety that is required to deliver these services. So what Celsius has done differently than most of the people is we created these like zones that make it super easy for people to join us, right? And most of the world today is in that comfort zone. Again, 80% of the world denominates their transactions with each other in US dollars. The United States, believe it or not, is only 5% of the world population. Yet somehow we convince 80% of the people in the world to transact in US dollars. That's why we're so rich and powerful. The US military is here to protect the dollar, not anything else. If you think the US military is protecting you, it's not. Okay? Could care less about you. It's protecting the US dollar as a reserve currency. Right? So what we're trying to provide is 3 groups of assets. Gold or gold-denominated assets. You can buy tokenized gold on the blockchain. Stable coins, right? So today, there's no source of yield. Celsius provides incredible source of yield. Earn 8.8% on your dollars, on your pounds, on your Canadian dollars, on your Australian dollars, and so on and so on, right? Try to beat that over a 4-year period, right? Obviously, there's no bank in the world that can match that. There's no bank in the world that can match 1/10 of that, right? And DeFi will match it for a day and then go back down to a much lower rate, right? So also, Celsius provides yield or in addition to custody, right, provides yield on 45 other assets, which are mostly crypto assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, whatever your favorite one is, that are not gold or stable coins. So, by the way, the clock isn't running, so I don't know how much time I have left. If you want to, or I can talk till tomorrow. So, so if you look at the last 12 years, I got to fix that slide. If you look at the last 12 years, you'll see that we actually went through 4 waves of innovation, 4 waves of adoption. And the first one was, again, Satoshi kind of creating this amazing thing called Bitcoin, solving one of the hardest puzzles in computer science. Okay? He should get, or she should get the Nobel Prize for this. Probably the Peace Prize, not the, so not the the prize for economics. So what Satoshi has figured out is how to make a digital asset that can run on the internet without, like if I give you a copy of my cat, I have the original, no, you have the original, it doesn't matter, right? The copy is also the original. Try that with a $20 bill. If I sent you $20 and you also have the same original, then how do you, that's what the Fed does, right? No, that was a joke. But in the real world, you got to keep track of who actually holds the money. So first we had the cypherpunks kind of come in and grab this idea and try to run with it, right? Then the second wave of adoption was libertarian. So the cypherpunks hand off the baton after 3 years and say, we can't find enough people. Libertarians grab the same baton and say, hey, we're going to save the world. This thing is amazing. We can fund programs against hunger. We can provide, banking services to 4 billion people who are unbanked or underbanked, right? We're going to solve all the world's problems. Obviously, that hasn't happened for a variety of reasons, but there weren't enough libertarians to kind of save the day, right? And then we have, again, the baton is being handed off. This is about 2015, 2016. Handed off to a bunch of speculators who are like, hey, we figured it out. This is all about price appreciation. Store of value, we're going to run this thing up. Then we're going to have the institution come in and buy it from us at $50,000 a Bitcoin. Just give me the baton. I'm going to finish this race, right? So good plan. We kind of got stuck 2017, right? We had a crash in 2018, down 83%. 83%. Ouch. Anyone here survived the winter? Yeah? That was painful, right? But if you were hodling, you did just fine. If you were averaging in, those were the cheapest coins you will ever buy in your life, right? So it's all about what's your conviction? How much value do you have? How much of your asset, what percentage of your asset you're willing to allocate for this asset class, right? So I lived through this, right? So back in 1800, no, just kidding. But back in the early 90s, I went through exactly the same thing that's happening now with the voice of IP. And what happened back then is that the phone companies, there were only 120 or so phone companies around the world, and they thought they had this exclusive monopoly on allowing you to talk to your friends and family, and they charged you 50 cents a minute domestic call, $3 a minute to call your friends overseas. Remember those days? Some of you remember. If you don't remember, ask your parents. And most people, right? Most people around the world view that as just fait accompli. That's how the world's supposed to run. And I was 20-something-year-old. I was running around telling people, no, you don't understand. We can take voice, put it on the internet, and then it's free. And people are like, what the heck are you talking about? The internet is just a dial-up modem that runs on the phone network that connects you to some server, and that's costing 50 cents a minute. What are you talking about, free calls on the internet? No, you don't get it. In the future, where I live all by myself, 10 years from now, the internet is the underlying network, and everything else just rides on top of it, right? That's what we're going through right now. The blockchain is the underlying network, and everything is going to run on top of it. Anyone believes in that? Join me in the future? The Celsians in the front. That's it. That's all I'm getting. So the point is that I've seen this movie before. I know how it ends. So I kind of run ahead and I'm like, hey, come over here. Follow me. I know where this is going. But as you can see, the room is empty. They much rather sell their NFTs to each other. So really, if you think of Pac-Man, of crypto as a Pac-Man, right? Really, really hungry Pac-Man. Just keeps running and eating one asset class after the next. It's like a black hole. It just keeps absorbing any type of assets. So and you ask yourself, why? Why is this happening so fast? The regulators, the banks, everybody is just tortured seeing this thing that's supposed to die, this thing that they already thought died 10 times over, Mt. Gox and all the scams and whatever. No, it just keeps walking. It keeps rising. It's like a phoenix that just keeps burning itself out and then rising from the ashes again and again and again. Just imagine being a regulator or being a bank. You just can't. Jamie Dimon, you're like, I hate this thing. Can somebody kill it already? Right? So why is it working so well? Why? Right now, 48% of Americans have either an NFT or some type of crypto. A few months ago, it was 16%. Just a few months ago. That's how fast this thing is moving. This is going faster than the internet. And I lived through the internet growth. Believe me, I thought there would be nothing bigger than that. Right? So this mass adoption, right? We talked about anarchists, libertarians, right? Speculators, institutions. We had Satoshi, then we had what? You have to fix the fonts, Wasim, come on. And so Satoshi gave us Bitcoin, but since then, we have 13,000 different projects. Cambrian explosion, right, of experimentation going on in real time. Boom, 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 right? The pace of innovation in crypto is faster than anything you've ever seen in any industry. And I've been in the phone business, 4G, 5G, you name it, the internet infrastructure. We're talking about 1,000 times faster than the banking innovation, right? Every day something new happening. So the question is, okay, what's the next step? We have Ethereum. Is it going to be NFTs? Is it going to be security tokens, right? Libra, anyone here Libra? Rest in peace, right? Stable coins, right? So Celsius have done a very good job. The team at Celsius, 530 people, done a very good job predicting every one of those steps. Getting there ahead of everybody else and saying, hey, come over. Here's yield. Here is mining. Here is stable coins, 13 stable coins earning 8.8%. Right? We paid out $800 million in yield, not in AUM. We paid out to our million people, community of 1 million users, $800 million in yield. More than all these people put together. So some examples of what we have. This is as of August 1st. You can see the AUM has moved pretty well since August 1st. And it's really simple, right? You can basically either use an app or you can use a web app. You log in, you create an account, you move some assets, you earn yield. You need a loan, you can do a margin borrow, the equivalent to margin borrow. You can borrow at 1% per year. Anyone here can get 1% from their bank or any DeFi platform, right? You borrow, even when it drops to 1%, you borrow it and you wake up in the morning and it's 13%. And you're like, wait a second. It was just 1% an hour ago. Well, welcome to DeFi. So the key is creating a sustainable flywheel that can create income and can create yield both for the users and for the platform, right? Because Celsius doesn't, we don't pay it from our treasury. We pay yield because we earn it on the other side. We earn it from institutions, from exchanges, from DeFi, mining, and so on and so on. And that's really what everybody else is finding very, very hard to do. We see a lot of companies creating or managing to get a lot of assets. Like look at Compound. I think they're advertising $20 billion in asset. But if you look at how much of it is deployed, it's less than 20%, right? Celsius has a 92% deploy rate. Our average is 87%. That's the secret for Celsius. 87% deployment, right? So that is the formula that allows you to compete with the banking system. If you have a formula that only works one day a week when the markets are moving or when NFTs are moving or whatever, that is not a sustainable competitive advantage, right? And sooner or later, these large financial institutions are going to come for it. They're going to come and play in your field. And then you're going to have to perform at their level. They have fractional banking reserves. They have unlimited funds that can borrow from the Fed. They have many, many advantages that we, Celsius, don't have because we don't have a banking charter. We don't plan to get one. Right? So how do you compete against these institutions? Again, the Medicis invented the banking model 700 years ago. Nothing has changed. It's the same model. Survived every recession, survived every economic upturn, survived every war. Right? So how do you survive against that? Forbes ranked us as top 3 blockchain, even though we're not a blockchain. We have to tell them that, by the way. We support 14 different blockchains. We don't have a fight in the game. We're not trying to build another castle like Solana or like Ethereum or like Bitcoin or like whatever. It's not about all these players fighting with each other. It's about CeFi fighting with TradFi. It's about, are we going to onboard billions of people? Are we going to transfer trillions of dollars from TradFi to CeFi? That is how we see the world, and that's why the room is empty. You see, it's so early, it's a secret. No one even found out about it. And we have 25 billion in assets, and it's a secret. All right, I have 8 minutes left. I'm going to try to go through this real quick. Exchanges are socialized losses, right? Today, exchanges effectively create socialized losses. Same thing with the banks, right? Celsius Network is socializing profits. We're taking a yield that we create and we give it to our customers. Banks take yield. Banks create yield. You know, when they tell you they can only pay you 0.1%, that's not what they're paying their shareholders, right? The yield on the dividend for most banks is 3 to 4%. And if you look at their return on capital, it's 15 to 17%. So they know how to make money on money. They just choose not to give it to their customers. They choose to give all of it to their shareholders and themselves as a bonus, right? So socialized profits versus socialized losses, right? Decentralization. What is decentralization? It's a war between toll collectors and users, right? So it's not about selling NFTs to each other, okay? It's not about figuring out, oh, you know, I can basically farm with tokens that are printed infinitum and create fake yield. That's fake yield. That token is fake yield. It's not real yield. It's not sustainable, right? So you want to win this war, right? You got to create utility, real utility that users can use long term, right? You want to add, you know, hundreds of millions of users, you need less volatility and more utility. If you look at what Celsius has done since 2017 is add more and more and more utility to our platform, right? And I can tell you everybody else is very good at copying it, but they haven't figured out where that yield is coming from. So it's great. It's easy to add assets. It's just very hard to get that deployment. Very hard to get that 90% deployment consistently. Bitcoin is doomsday insurance. Stable coins are everyday interest. That's why the Fed, that's why Treasury are so worried about it, right? This is a complete and utter replacement for the banking system. So crypto is here to replace the middleman with middleware, right? Who's the middleman, right? Your financial institutions, the toll collectors are just the middleman. They sit between your money and yield. Again, they collect that yield, pay you 0.1%, and all of us, every 2 weeks, every month, take our paycheck and give it to the people who don't pay you anything for that hard-earned money. But when you use your credit card, you get charged 24%. How is that working? If you earn nothing but you pay 24% for the same money you borrowed. Your bank is just giving you your neighbor's money. Where's the money coming from when the bank gives you credit on your credit card? It comes from deposits of other people that live in your building. You can meet them in the elevator and do that transaction at 9%. Not kidding. Just put a sign, you know. So, prediction, Bitcoin replaces gold. Why? It's an exceptional store of value. It's digital gold, right? Ethereum replaces the banks, right? And that's what we're starting to see. So, living with the banks is like living in a bad marriage, right? So, if you haven't been through a bad marriage, go through one and then you can see that I'm right. No, just kidding. If the Fed is not your friend, when the Fed tells you low inflation is good for you, you know, is it really good for you? Or is deflation good for you, or inflation is good for you? If you're holding assets, if you're holding dollars, you want deflation, you don't want inflation, right? So the bad news about Bitcoin and Ethereum is actually good news, because every day somebody loses a wallet, loses a key. That's deflationary pressure on an asset that has a finite number of coins. That's what creates deflation on Ethereum. There's much more deflation on Ethereum from lost keys than there is from EIP 1559, right? Just no one wants to talk about it. But the inactive wallets are growing just as fast as the community is growing. My own 20-year-old son, I gave him coins a few years ago. He has no clue where the keys are, where it is. There's like tens of thousands of dollars on it, right? Psh, gone to thin air, never going to be transacted again. The US dollar is not your friend. Why? The dollar is a horrible store of value, right? It lost 90-something% of its value, but it's a great form of payment. Again, 80% of the world is using it as a form of payment, right? Bitcoin is a horrible form of payment. Anyone here bought a Tesla with your Bitcoin, or a couch, or coffee? That coffee now costs you $50, right? That coffee you paid with your Bitcoin a year ago is costing you $50 to $60. Are you happy with that cup of coffee, or you want it back? I have a time machine out there. We can go get it, right? So Bitcoin is an exceptional store of value, and that's what you should use it for. Anyone who's trying to convince you to use the card or use whatever to spend your Bitcoin is trying to take your coins from you. If Elon Musk is willing to give you one of his Tesla and take Bitcoin for you, who do you think has the better side of the deal? The richest man in the world, or second richest, or whatever, is willing to do that trade with you, right? Again, debt, us borrowing from the future. So don't ask what the bank or the government can do for you. Ask what CeFi or DeFi can do for you. Or come and invent it with us, right? If you have an idea, you want to work on it, we're open for business. We're always looking for the next great idea. So people tell me all the time, Alex, come on. The phone companies, yeah, we can see how you helped take down the phone companies. But taking down the banks, come on. Look at any city in the world. The largest, tallest building in every city in the world, right, are not the churches, it's the banks. Used to be the churches, right, when everything was one floor. So how did the banks get to own all that real estate and dominate the financial system, you know? All right, we're almost done. I promise the torture is over, you know? So what can you do, right? You can bring others into crypto. And when I used to do this slide in empty rooms all over the world, no, just kidding. You know, everybody would tell me, look, you know, we're not sure about it, we're not whatever. Today, it's cool to have crypto, you know? Even my own kids are saying, wow, Dad, you know, like you really picked up a cool place to, you know, to hang out. Like you have a real community. Like people are really following you, you know? So crypto became cool because it's bringing power back to the people, right? It's creating a lot of value for people who don't even remember. They can't even remember a time where banks and financial institutions acted in our best interest, you know? So This is our team from the launch, right? This is a launch pick right before the launch. So this is us 2017, and this was the entire team, I think. We're now 530 people. It's amazing, and we have few survivors in the room. But it was a crazy ride, a lot of fun, and again, we are super excited being able to help over 1 million people change their financial future. And so thanks for coming. And you know, the regulators in the room, you can come and ask me questions after this presentation.